I'm Bob Phillips. Back in 1983, I was asked to prepare a feature story for television about a Joplin firm that repaired department store mannequins. I didn't know it then, but from that beginning, I went on to do over 460 TV features, which were called the Phillips Files. Done in the four-state area, they aired between 1983 and 1997. Along with some talented photographers, we covered a lot of ground, traveling interstate highways and country lanes, up mountains and down hollers, to document the people, places, and things that make up this many-faceted area. Here, then, are a few of the Phillips Files. Any dog lover would enjoy a visit to Farlow, Chihuahua World in Neosho. Operated by Farrell and Lois Steen, it's the largest Chihuahua breeding facility in the world. The day we dropped in, the Steens had 300 of the little dogs on hand. Farrell and Lois are used to a lot of activity around their place. They raised 19 children. They went into the Chihuahua breeding business in 1987. And today, pet lovers from across the country come here to buy pedigreed Chihuahuas, $140 for a male and $165 for a breeding female. The Steens sell a lot of dogs. Recently, one visiting breeder bought 41 at one time. Government-approved, Farlow World is a first-class operation. The dogs are healthy, feisty, and at full bark. Their cages are carpeted, the temperature a constant 78 degrees. Even the outside kennels have heat lamps to keep them warm. Lois, a former nurse and hospital administrator, gives the dogs their necessary shots and monitors their condition every 2 hours, night and day. Farrell says he and Lois didn't originally plan for their operation to be so large.
Our first thought was we could take them around to the nursing homes or things like that. Nice little pets for these people to hold. They love to hold a baby or a puppy or some things like that. And that was basically what the thought was at that time. And then the appeal of the dog itself is what brought it on.
Lois knows the name of every dog here, which is quite a feat considering the number on hand. I asked her how she does it.
Well, it's like children. You don't forget your children when you name them. I raised these babies. I delivered most of them. I was the one that named them. You give them a name, you don't forget it. I'm with them every day. I live with them.
Good-natured and affectionate, Chihuahuas live twice as long as most dogs, have few health problems, and rank 14th in popularity among dog owners worldwide. Farrell and Lois consider them ideal pets, especially for the elderly. The Steens need never resort to a sales pitch to sell their Chihuahuas. They say these little guys have a habit of selling themselves. At Farlow, Chihuahua World in Neosho, Bob Phillips, KODE News. The House Handle Company in Cassville carries on a time-honored business. House makes tool handles, lots of tool handles. Owner Kenny House recently took us on a tour of his operation. In the well-stocked warehouse, you can see any kind of handle imaginable. Handles for axes, picks, shovels, sledges, brooms, hammers, and plows. In all, 105 different types. They are made from white oak, ash, and hickory logs that Kenny purchases from several area woodcutters. After the logs have dried for 4 to 6 weeks, they're ready for use in the 3-step operation. First comes the sawing, then the wood is turned on a lathe, and finally ground and sanded smooth. On this day, the workmen were making handles for axes and tomahawks. Tomahawks? Yep. Kenny says his crew makes 20,000 tomahawk handles a year. They're always in demand, especially by mountain men and Indian tribes. There are no fancy high-tech gadgets here. We didn't see a single computer. It's all done by skilled craftsmen using their hands and old, well-worn machinery. The process hasn't changed much in the last 100 years. Kenny says the number of handle-making companies is dwindling. Modern technology has all but forgotten about them.
Well, there's fewer and fewer people doing it. Now, I think that probably the demand for handles is as great as it's ever been, but there are fewer and fewer people in the industry doing it. And the main reason that we're still doing all this in more or less with hand work is because really people that invent the machines and stuff kind of passed us by whenever they've been making new machines. There's just no new machines to manufacture handles with.
But even without whiz-bang modern machinery, Kenny's employees still turn out 600,000 handles a year. Through wholesalers, they're marketed in farm, hardware, and variety stores all over this country and in Canada. 60% of them are purchased by customers here in the Midwest. Everything here, from tomahawk handles to walking canes, is made with a hands-on process. And that's kind of nice, knowing that an ancient craft is still being done in the same old way. In Cassville, Bob Phillips, KODE News. Denny Wolfe of Jenkins, Missouri, is a practitioner of an ancient art, the weaving of functional and decorative native white oak baskets. Denny gave up construction work 16 years ago to go into basket weaving full-time. His family eventually joined in, and today Denny, his mother Irma, wife Linda, and son Denny Ray produce from 1,500 to 2,000 baskets a year of 20 different sizes that are featured in specialty stores and gift shops all over the Ozarks. They've been sold at Silver Dollar City for several years. Basket weaving dates from biblical times. The ancient Egyptians made reed boats in this fashion, and early American Indians were master basket weavers. The process begins with the shaving of thin strips of oak using a draw knife. This requires expertise, a steady hand, and a thorough knowledge of wood. Denny has come up with a novel alternative for this process. Using an old washing machine, he's fashioned a power assist system for the draw knife. He just guides it, and the washer does the rest. Then, using different size forms, the strips are woven into the baskets, which, with a minimum of care, will last a lifetime. Basket weavers must study to acquire the necessary skills, and Denny says you can't learn how by reading books.
I couldn't have learned out of a book, I don't think. I'd had to, have somebody show me, and of course I knew timber some, and that helped too. And if you didn't, why, that would be another thing that would hinder you. You'd have to know the grain of the timber and what kind of timber, it can't be a lot of knots or, stuff like that. You pretty well got to know, what you're doing on the way you cut with the grain of the wood and stuff, because if you don't, it'll break and it'll tear and you'll just have a terrible time with it.
Denny and his family keep busy year-round to supply their customers, especially during the holiday season. Because they're both decorative and useful, the baskets make ideal gifts. But no matter how many orders come in, the priority here is quality, not quantity. Basket weaving is one of the oldest crafts in the world, and no matter how times may change, the works of art produced by folks like Denny and his family will always be in demand. In Jenkins, Missouri, Bob Phillips, KODE News. Behold the freshwater fisherman in his avid pursuit of the finny tribe. Fishing is big business in America, and nowhere is that better illustrated than at Lucky Strike Manufacturing in Cassville. This company makes and sells jigs and plastic worms for every kind of fishing, but primarily for panfish and bass. Recently, boss John Hendricks took us on a quick tour. Lucky Strike began its present Cassville operation in 1985, and today its lures are sold in 43 states and 14 foreign countries. Several nationally known professional fishermen, such as Guido Hibden and Joplin's Randy Blockett, use and endorse Lucky Strikes. In making its jigs, the plant uses 4 tons of lead a month. From the pouring of the hot lead up to the final 3 coats of paint, it takes 3 days to fabricate and finish a jig. Most are made by hand, thus assuring more quality control. And plastic bait? You name the color and shape, and you'll find it here. Lucky Strike makes 200 basic types of lures in 14,000 color combinations. Why so many? John says it's because fishermen, both amateurs and professionals, are a superstitious bunch.
I think a lot of colors is if that's what you believe in, that's what you do good with. I think fishing, the fish are there, and if you think that you have the right color and you're convinced that that's going to be the one that works for you, that's what's successful for that particular fisherman. On our pros, well, they'll call in and say, oh, I got to have this certain color. A lot of times we have to run 8,000 or 9,000 baits that we don't even stock in our catalog just to get them a color to use at a certain body of water.
The packaging line here is always humming since orders are flooding in all the time. John's 40 employees make and ship literally millions of lures a year. Easily affordable, they sell for about $2. And, John says, there's another major selling point.
Our lures are guaranteed. As long as you can find the fish, they will work.
A guaranteed fishing lure. You can't beat that. Next time you're on the hunt for lunker bass, take a close look at that lure of yours. Chances are it came from right here. In Cassville, Bob Phillips, KODE News. This is Raku Pottery, an ancient form of art developed by the Japanese in the 16th century. It's quite unlike any other established pottery type. One of the few Raku artisans in this area is Brent Skinner of Diamond, who began throwing pots when he was in high school. He learned Raku late in 1991, and most of his pottery is now done in this fashion. Basically, it works like this. A stable, leadless glaze is applied to a once-fired clay pot. After this, it goes back in the kiln for 40 minutes at 1700 degrees. Then it's removed while glowing hot and placed in a fireproof container filled with oak leaves, sawdust, or straw, which the hot pot ignites. The container is then sealed tightly for up to an hour, and the burning material reduces the amount of oxygen inside. This causes the colors and patterns to emerge. Then the pot is removed, exposed to the air, and dipped in cold water. The final result is a striking kaleidoscope of colors created by a centuries-old process. Raku is not particularly difficult to learn, but Brent says only a few artisans have chosen to practice it.
Not too many potters do it because it's non-functional ware. People can't use it in their kitchens. It's just to look at. It's to set up on a shelf and be enjoyed, not used. It's more expensive because I have between 15 and 50% breakage. The more breakage I've got, my prices have got to show it too. So I do have a lot of breakage, a lot gets trashed. Every piece is unique. No two pieces come out alike. You never know what you're going to get until you open up the barrel and take it out. It's like Christmas. Surprise every time.
Brent would like to see more craftsmen take up Raku, and he says anyone interested in learning how is welcome to watch him work. He makes about a dozen Raku pots a day. Depending on size, they sell for $20 to $120. They can be seen in area art galleries and in florist and specialty shops. Raku, from the Orient to the Ozarks, is quite a trip. This beautiful form of art is becoming very fashionable, and the few Raku potters such as Brent can figure on staying plenty busy for a long time. In Diamond, Missouri, I'm Bob Phillips. These Native American scenes are unique in all the world. They're oil painted on feathers. Artist Bill Robertson of Claremore, Oklahoma, is the only man living known to use this technique. Retired from the oil industry, Bill began painting in acrylics in 1974. On a business trip to London 2 years later, he learned feather painting from an elderly British artist who taught him the secret for stabilizing the oil paints on the feathers. That old gentleman has since passed on, leaving Bill the only artist who knows that secret process. He took up feather painting full-time in late 1991. Bill prefers to use flat tail feathers he obtains from Indian stores. He won't use feathers from endangered birds. It takes 2 hours to treat each feather and about 20 hours to paint it. The work is exacting and tedious with no margin for error. Consider the surface Bill uses, as thin as nylon hose. The painting must be less than 2 inches wide and only as tall as the feather is high. He signs them with the nickname Wolf. Bill has a feel for things Native American. Though not registered on tribal rolls, he's 1/16 Cherokee. Feathers have always played a major role in Indian culture, but no Indian artist has ever before attempted to paint on them. I asked Bill, why not?
I think a lot of it is because that maybe somebody has tried it in the past, but they couldn't hold the oil paint on the feather because they didn't have a treatment process to do it. The paint will bleed right through the feather. Only by this treatment process can you hold the paint on there and without it bleeding through. I suppose, as you know, water will run off of a duck's back just like crazy, and to hold oil paints on a feather is not that easy, because the other thing is if moisture creeps in from the back side of that feather, it's going to lift that oil paint right off the feather. Well, it's not going to do it with the concept that I have.
Bill says he has to paint nearly non-stop these days to keep up with demand. He's already sold over 60 feathers at prices starting from $250. They're now on display in several Oklahoma art galleries, and in the future, Bill plans to sell them worldwide. An entirely new concept in Native American art, little masterpieces painted by the world's only known feather artist. You'll be hearing a lot more about Bill Robertson in the future. In Claremore, Oklahoma, Bob Phillips, KODE News. Bill Cox of Joplin has what some might call an enviable hobby. He's a builder of custom golf clubs. We visited his workshop recently to see how he fashions custom clubs that are well known for their craftsmanship. Bill's been making and repairing clubs since 1973. He retired as a tool and die maker in 1977, and since then he's devoted full time to his hobby. He says it's a hobby. He seems to work mighty hard at it. A longtime golfer, Bill is also a student of the game. He's been studying golf swings for 40 years. When he played regularly, he was a scratch golfer with a 4 handicap. He's been the golf coach at Missouri Southern State College for 7 years and accompanies the student team on all road trips. A golf club is a golf club, right? Wrong. A good golf club is a precision instrument made of meticulously tested components. It doesn't hurt to be a scientist when making custom clubs. You have to know things like ball trajectory, the flex and weight of the shaft, the torque and speed of the head. And these factors must be tailored specifically to the golfer using the club. That's why, before building a custom club, Bill insists on watching the customer on the golf course.
I have to know what their swing is. We all have a different swing, plus the fact that I like to work with them and on their swing, and give them the basic fundamentals of what a golf swing is all about. And also, it is absolutely essential that I see the trajectory of the ball. The only way you can match a golf club to a player is through the trajectory of the golf ball. If you hit it too low or too high, the club doesn't fit you. The only way that a club will be finalized is when the trajectory of that ball is proper.
Bill charges $350 to build a set of 10 clubs, and each one is uniformly precise. He has all the orders he can handle. Bill doesn't play golf much anymore, just a few holes now and then. He's usually too busy coaching the MSSC team or hard at it in his workshop. A lot more goes into one of these things than meets the eye. Head speed, trajectory, arc. A lot of equations go into the making of a superior golf club. To Bill Cox, it's a challenging and rewarding hobby. In Joplin, Missouri, I'm Bob Phillips. This is Chatterbox Junction in Galena, one of the most unusual barber shops in America. It's the one with the locomotive parked alongside. Veteran barber Gary Chatterton leased the rundown old building in mid-1991. A history buff, he saw its possibilities. It sits in a once bustling location. This was Galena, circa 1907, a rowdy little boom town of 15,000 that grew from the lead and zinc mining fields nearby. Built in 1922, the shop was originally a service station along Route 66, which was Galena's main thoroughfare. Gary decided to restore it. The landlord furnished the materials. Gary supplied the elbow grease. It wasn't easy.
A lot of hours. I worked about 16 hours a day, 6 days a week for almost 4 months, just strictly working on the building. And just about all labor. I've probably stripped off 25, 30 coats of paint, patched all the cracks, replastered everything, tried to put it back just exactly the way it was when it was built back in the 20s. And I'm not done with it yet. That's just got close, so. But just hours and hours and hours work.
Gary's shop reflects a vanished era. The chairs are from the Galena Oddfellows Lodge, the stove from a Galena lead mine, the barber chair from a 1900s Joplin shop, and the sink from Joplin's famed Connor Hotel. Then, of course, there's the huge locomotive just outside. The 100-ton diesel was used during World War II at the nearby Gulf Chemical Plant. Inside the barber shop, Gary has an air hose connected to the locomotive, and when kids finish getting their ears lowered, they get to blow the horn. By the way, the nearby water tower came from an early Galena distillery. Gary hopes to make his corner a place where people can get a taste of Galena's golden age. In the future, he'll put an arcade inside the locomotive, and the old dome from Galena City Hall will be the entrance to a coffee shop he has planned. Work will be completed in 1995. A lot of people like Gary Chatterton are firmly committed to bringing some of the vintage flavor back to this old mining town. It's steeped in history, and they fully intend to preserve it. At Chatterbox Junction in Galena, Bob Phillips, KODE News. This imposing edifice is the Scottish Rite Cathedral in Joplin. For nearly 70 years, it's been one of the city's landmark buildings. Construction on the three-story cathedral began in 1919, and with pomp and ceremony, it was dedicated February 12, 1923. Costing $350,000, it was Joplin's most elaborate and expensive building devoted to non-commercial interests. Today, it has 4,500 members of the Masonic Order. The interior is elegance personified. The staircase, in Italian and Greek Renaissance style, is made of white Italian marble. Hand-painted murals, wrought moldings, and antique fittings adorn the walls and ceiling. With its 6 oak columns, the social room is a symphony of mahogany, cherry, and oak furnishings, many of the pieces original. The main auditorium, seating 500 people, is used for special events and the conferring of Masonic degrees. There are 3 organs in the cathedral. The auditorium organ was purchased in Chicago in 1922 for $25,000. Today, it's beyond price. Walking through the many rooms, one is struck by the immaculate condition of the building inside and out, the result of an ongoing $300,000 renovation program.
You have to do something every year in the way of upkeep. We have continually, since 1975, spent money on the building in order to keep it in the condition it is today. We plan to continue our renovation every year in the future.
Few people outside the Masonic Order have visited this building. It's been called the Invisible Cathedral since it isn't well known to the public. Freemasonry is a fraternity. It isn't a secret society, nor is it a church. Visitors are not forbidden here. In fact, Masons welcome them to the cathedral.
We encourage anyone that would like to come in to give us a call, and we would be more than happy to take them on a tour.
This grand building reflects an era when quiet dignity and opulent decor were an important part of American life. Rich in history and tradition, the Scottish Rite Cathedral is truly one of this city's architectural jewels. In Joplin, Missouri, I'm Bob Phillips.